I'm continuing coloring this same little image. The rainbow will come. Just put a base coat on her legs of E000, adding some shadows with an E11 now. I really like E11 better than the E01, and I like the E13 better than the 03 or 02, excuse me, when I'm adding a little more shadow to skin tones because it doesn't look so pinky. It gives it a little bit more of a natural skin tone, in my opinion. It doesn't mean you can't use the others. It just means that normally I'm going to pick these. Okay, adding a little more depth in there. I'll still soften that some. I'm sorry I got my hair in the video. I didn't notice that till it was too late. Tried to crop it out where I could, but was leaning over a little too close to see what I was doing. I'm still learning on this whole video thing. Need some shadows on her neck there, that her head would cast on the neck. But I'm close to being finished with the skin tones there. Let's move on to the puddle. I have some BG70 and some BG72. Now, there's quite a value difference between those. It seems like a little bit more to me than some 2 steps between colors. So I'm going to use a little bit of palette blending probably in order to get my BG72 blended smoothly into my 70. First, I'm base coating most of my puddle with the BG70. I can leave a few white places. Won't hurt anything. Water's shiny. Okay, there's some BG70. I'm going to try blending it straight in. But again, I can always go to palette blending if that's not working well. I know some people have made a custom marker that's a BG71 by mixing half and half of the BG70 and the BG72. Yeah, I think we're going to try palette blending there. So that little acetate sheet there that has the glare on it, that's just one of my stamp carrier sheets. You know how you get your acrylic stamps on those little acrylic sheets? Well, I'm using that as my palette. I have a lifetime supply of those now, I think, so may as well use them for a palette. There, that makes for a little bit easier blend. Put some darkness around her other boot. I'm going to keep those little places where it's splashed up just a little bit lighter. Might even be fun to go back with some opaque white and add some white foamy places. Now, while I'm just casting some shadows here of her boots, it occurred to me after I finished that it really might have been fun to put more of a reflection there. If she's standing in stiller water, you could have a reflection. Now, the only problem with that is since you have those 2 areas that are splashed up by the boots, the water's obviously not still there, so maybe the whole puddle would be not still and you wouldn't really get a reflection of her, you know, as if she were standing in still water. It might be a fun thing to play with, though, just to experiment with. Okay, I'm feathering that 7-2 in with my 70. Just need a little more darkness there. Remember, it's contrast that's going to make your images look 3-dimensional. Appear to have volume, sometimes we say. I can tend to lose contrast because I tend to overwork things. I enjoy coloring, and so I can sit there and just work and work and work the same area until it's really overdone. That's probably why it takes me so long to get a video done, right? I'm about finished with the puddle here, though. We're going to move on to her hair next. I think because of the pattern paper I have in mind, I'm going to make her a blonde. It has little flecks of yellow in it along with the bright green and the bright pinks. So I have a YR30 here as my base tone. And then a YR21 next, and some YR24 as well. Sometimes hair has directional lines in it that gives you a pretty good clue as to exactly how you need to proceed with it. This hair is really pretty wide open, so other than just having those areas indicated by the bangs, you don't have a lot of areas that you must color exactly a certain way, since there are no ink lines there. But it's a really small area too, so as long as you're pleased with your resulting values in there, you'll be fine with the hair. There's some of my darkest, my YR24. Just because her head is a sphere, so I want to make sure that it's shaded so that it looks rounded, looks spherical. Add a little bit more darkness to that ponytail, or however that's pulled back there. And maybe a tiny bit more to the tips of her bangs as well. I'm about finished with the hair. Okay, deepening in just a tiny bit more on my skin tones there. Since I had gotten that dark with the back of the hair, I thought I needed to add a little bit more of a shadow underneath the hair, as well as on the side of the face. Again, I could leave hard shadows if she were in direct sunlight, but since she's standing in rain, I soften those out a good bit. And I'm going to add a little bit more shading on the legs too. It's always easier to go back and add more darkness than to try to get rid of it if you have more than you want. So right now I'm using my skin tones again, not the colors that you see stacked out there. That's an E00 that I'm using to blend in a little of the E13 that I had added at the tops of the legs. Moving along to the umbrella handle there. We're getting near the end. I have an E50 that I'm using as a base tone. That's a color that I really like to use as a base skin tone as well, for a skin tone that's a little more on the yellow side. And then an E53 and an E55. When I am using E55, which I haven't used yet, I haven't pulled that one out yet, but when I am, I try not to go over it very much with the lighter colors, because that's one that can turn a little bit green It gets kind of greenish undertones when you lighten it up with, say, the E53 or E50. So once I put down an E55, I don't do a lot of messing around with it, a lot of lightening. Okay, I picked up an E57 there because the 55 wasn't dark enough. I guess I'm making that umbrella handle wooden, even though chances are it's probably metal. Added a tiny bit of shadow right under her hand, and now I need to do something with the umbrella handle after I'm finished with that pole. Oh, let's make it bright green to go with the rest of the umbrella. So, YG01 for base, YG03 to add a few little shadows. Well, that's a bright enough umbrella and coat to cheer up any rainy day, isn't it? I think that headband might need to be pink. So let's pull the RV04 out one more time. Then I want to add a little sky behind her. What I'm doing right now is wetting the paper with my colorless blender, that's my 0, and then I'll work into that wet area, and it makes it just a little bit easier to soften that edge right up into the white of the paper if I've put some colorless blender down to start with. The thing is, you have to do it in a very small area because the colorless blender dries quickly. You don't have to do it that way. You could just put down your, well, I have B40 there. I could just put that down and then go back with my colorless blender and soften it. It just makes the whole softening just slightly easier if I have put down a tiny bit of colorless blender to start with. But see, I'm working in really manageable areas. That time I did not put the colorless blender first because I wanted you to see that you can do it either way. You should end up with the same result. Whether you put colorless blender first or don't, it's just a little bit faster to blend if you do put it. Okay, feathering that blue, that pale blue right down into my colorless blender there. And see, there's really not a lot that I have to go back to do to soften that right in between her legs. So I'll soften the other one first since there was no blender on the paper there, then go back and soften this. I don't really feel like I have to put sky around the whole back of the umbrella. I just wanted to add a hint of that blue-green in there for some added color, just right around her. But that's how you soften into the white of the paper. It's not quite dry yet. When it's completely dry, you won't see the little colorless blender edge that you see now right behind in between her legs. Thank you for sticking with me through another half hour's worth of video. I hope that helped a little bit with the My Favorite Things image.